Ben Habib, who's a former MEP and former Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Ben, a very solemn occasion this morning, I'm sure, for you who was observing what was happening there.
Well, actually, I haven't been down yet, Peter. I'm going to be.
Oh, you're going down. Sorry, I thought you'd been down. Apologies.
No, I'm going down. I'm going down straight after this interview. I had planned to go before this interview, but I heard, like you have, that they're going to be, or possibly could be, pro-Palestinian marches, and I wanted to go once the crowds had cleared a little bit. I could get closer to the cenotaph and observe precisely what goes on. That's
a very good idea, Ben, actually, and I know that certainly we don't seem, those protests don't seem to have materialised this morning from what I've heard or read anyway. We've been monitoring what's happening. There is a worry about tomorrow, though, and various protests, but I know that you've been observing this, as we all, of course, have here. Nigel Farage apparently was there. He was on a platform, on a sort of balcony overlooking what was happening, but didn't lay a wreath because there are only certain parties who do. But Ben, your thoughts today on this very important day for our country as we remember the freedoms that were being fought for by so many people in the past and indeed today still?
Well, it's a poignant day. It's a day where we remember the giant shoulders on which we stand, the freedoms which we enjoy, the freedom of speech, the freedom to protest, the freedom to have the debate that you and I are having now is all down to the people who died and who we're remembering today. It's all down to the creation of this wonderful country, its protection and its promotion, which couldn't have happened without these people. So it's a day we really need to take very seriously.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Ben, and we'll continue to monitor that. We see what is happening down there. I think those are possibly members of the Boys Brigade who are walking past. I recognise the uniform there. I was in the Boys Brigade some years ago, and I think perhaps there are members of different youth organisations who are certainly making sure that they are paying their respects and handing over their wreaths. Ben, I want to talk to you about another issue, actually, a political issue that we're talking about today. It's in the Sun today. It's about Germany and a legal loophole that Sir Keir Starmer says is thwarting his pledge to smash people trafficking gangs. This is the National Crime Agency boss, Graham Bigger. He's the Director General of the National Crime Agency. He says there's a loophole affecting the government's anti-crime drive. He says we have to operate with the laws that exist in all the countries that we work with, and we have to respect their different systems, but that does limit what the German law enforcement are able to do in support of us within the legal framework they have. And this is because it is not illegal to transport migrants through Germany to a non-EU nation, which includes the UK, since Brexit. Is this a sort of unintended consequence of Brexit, do you think? Ben, what's going on here?
This is a consequence of the Schengen zone. There are no borders in Europe. I'm surprised that Bigger has only just woken up to it. You know, we go from the sublime to the ridiculous in this debate, don't we? We have a Royal Navy which seems incapable, unwilling, or our political leaders aren't prepared to direct it to stop the dinghies. We are a permanent member of the UN Security Council, and yet we can't protect our borders. And if the Prime Minister thinks that the British people are going to be fooled into thinking that the reason we can't do it is because dinghies can move from across the German border without being stopped. I mean, it's just absurd, Peter, isn't it? What we've got to remember is that the political powers in Europe, the United Kingdom, and until recently the United States, didn't believe in borders, don't believe in borders. And I hope that the election of President Trump in the United States, where he's made it clear that he is going to reinstitute the enforcement of the border between Mexico and the US, I hope that that will seep across to Europe and that our political leaders will wake up and recognize that borders are here to protect us.
Do you think Sorry to interrupt you, Ben. I just wonder, do you think things will change with the election of President Trump? The fact that people will take this more seriously, both in America and here, because he is talking about perhaps using to enforce the law, essentially, to round up illegal immigrants and have them deported, which is something that just doesn't seem to be happening here, or even the prospect of it happening here.
The entire agenda of President Trump runs against the kind of globalist, internationalist agenda pursuant to which the Western world has been governed for the last 20 odd years. He stands for a proud, independent, prosperous United States of America. And some of the consequences of that, by the way, will not be good for the UK, because we will suffer as the United States promotes itself. And the only way to mitigate that suffering, the only way to prosper ourselves as a nation, is to follow suit, is to do what he's going to do, which is to cut taxes, to deregulate, to ditch net zero, to enforce our borders, to promote the British workforce. If we do what he does, we can then react to the economic challenges of a resurgent United States, where goods are going to be made more cost effectively, where businesses are going to be taxed less, where employment will flourish. We can only respond to that by adopting the same sort of agenda. So I hope that our government will wake up to that reality, and that we will therefore change the way that we've been governed for the last 27 odd years. And just remember that it's the British people that elect the government, and it's to the British people that they owe their obligations, not to the Paris Accord, not to European Union trading obligations, not to permanent structured cooperation in the European Defence Union. It is to the British people. And a critical component of all of that, coming right round to where we started, is the enforcement of our borders. If you do not enforce borders, you cease to be a nation state. You allow your society to be assaulted, and that is uncivilized. It is only civilized to protect your borders. And instead of whinging about the Germans being unable to stop dinghies crossing their borders, what we've got to do is direct the Royal Navy or Border Force, whichever agency we choose to adopt for this purpose, direct them to stop the dinghies at the point that they seek to enter the United Kingdom, which is the point of our territorial waters, and send them back. And we've got to show some physical endeavour at our border. And that's the simplest and most obvious and the correct solution.
Very, very interesting thoughts there, Ben. I just wonder, just to pick up on a little thing about what you said there about America, you talked about the consequences for the United Kingdom. What do you think those consequences, negative consequences, could be of a Trump presidency? We've heard talk about a trade war, we've heard about 20% tariffs, although perhaps some deal can be done on that. I just wonder what negatives you think there could be for the United Kingdom if President Trump does what he has pledged to do, and also perhaps things that maybe aren't in the public domain already.
Well, if we don't react to President Trump's new agenda, the United States' new agenda, and we don't cut taxes and we don't deregulate, we will find that Americans, forget about a trade agreement and all of that, that's all a sideshow. We will find that Americans will increasingly buy American goods because they'll be made more cheaply, they'll be made to their standards, they'll make them faster. They won't need British goods because we will be labouring under vastly more expensive energy costs. We'll be labouring under a more regulated system. We won't be able to produce the goods. Trade is all about producing stuff that other people want to buy. Trade agreements are just the icing on the cake that facilitate it. But if we are unable to make goods competitively for the American people, which increasingly we will be unable to do if they deregulate and cut taxes and we don't, we will be left out in the cold. The 10% tariff that he wishes to levy on European Union goods and the UK will be a drop in the ocean compared to the impact of our not following the American agenda. Then there's the security angle, which, we mustn't forget. And I applaud President Trump for telling NATO member states, including the United Kingdom, put your hand in your back pockets, contribute to the building up of your own defences, or you will not get the protection of the United States of America. It is entirely legitimate for the United States to require us to protect ourselves. And whilst he's at it, and I know he's no friend of the EU's, he holds them like I do, I think, with a high degree of contempt. What he should require is that there should be no European Defence Union. You cannot join the European Defence Union and be a member state of NATO. You've got to make your mind up. Are you part of the American defence protection and an umbrella, or are you going to go into some crazy relationship with Brussels, France and Germany, who, by the way, never make the right foreign policy decisions. Never make. And I can give you oodles of examples of where they're out of step with the Anglosphere.
OK, Ben, thank you very much indeed. That's Ben Habib there, who's the former MEP, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK.